This episode is brought to you by CBS All Access. If you don't already subscribe to CBS All Access, please use our affiliate link by going to talkthroughmedia.com/CBS. Using our affiliate link gives us a little credit, which helps us to keep bringing you great content. U.S. residents only.
And welcome to episode 59 of the Star Trek Discovery podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Ruthie.
And we will be covering Season 3, Episode 12 of Star Trek Discovery, titled, There is a Tide. Now, what episode is this, Ruthie?
It is the penultimate episode, Brian.
I don't know. But I wanted to take some time at the beginning of this because we always ask for reviews, and all of a sudden we got 4 reviews within the past couple of weeks. So I want to thank Ron Keith, TVaholics, Kaken Macon, which looks like is Will from SoCal, according to his review. And then Trekkie Trey the Trekker from and he says, hashtag I bet this run-on sentence is driving Ruthie crazy. So I want to thank all 4 of you for your 5-star reviews. So, and you too can review us. There is a link on the blog post, and I just posted it this morning again in the Facebook group, which helps you find where you can leave a review. And we always say like Apple Podcasts or iTunes, but there's also Stitcher and Podchaser and Castbox that allow reviews. So anyway, there's a link to it in the Facebook group and on the last several episodes. Anyway, before we get into There is a Tide, we have some feedback on the last 3 episodes. So we want to open hailing frequencies. Okay, so this first one is actually not a review or feedback. It's a rhyme. And our good friend, Trey from Pittsburgh, has this rhyme in the style of A Night Before Christmas. So here we go.
The USS Discovery had a fearless crew, and every single black alert Stamets put his hand in goo. And then there's Tilly, first officer, full of such cheer. She's actually an ensign. What the what's going on here? I knew a guy named Stamets. He had a head tilt. It must be something going on. A way an android's built. Colbert is his boyfriend. The mushroom doc, indeed. In fact, he can read so fast, he caught up with 900 years in one read. And then there is Osyraa, our confused human trill. Forgot to restart a diagnostic. Man, are you for real? It's been said the pilot Detmer can get through strife. It also has been asked, is Owo her wife? Our Kelpian captain, his name is Saru. He often pretends he knows what to do. He has a cool face. It's shaped like a worm. Give him radiation. Maybe he'll cause a burn. And then Jet Reno, she's a cool cat, but oftentimes I wonder, hey, where you at? Osyra's the bully of the space yard, and Saru put Tilly in charge. And after a struggle of this and that, you find out Osyra's still a green twat. I love watching Discovery. It's so much fun. And that's my little story of the good old NCC 1031.
Getting a little salty there towards the end.
Yeah, I have to give, of course. That is a great start for the penultimate episode. But yeah, anyway, thank you so much, Trey, for that. That made me laugh when I heard it first time and this time.
Yep, that was, I mean, if you're going to bleep out one word, you should have used Pratt, maybe, instead of that other word. I'm just saying, we might have to have our own censors. Hint, hint.
Next, we have feedback on the last 3 episodes from Bob from Michigan. Ruthie, you want to take this one?
All right. Bob from Michigan says, oh, and thank you, Trey, for that Discovery rhyme time. That was fun.
Yes,
right.
It was.
Bob from Michigan says, hello, Brian and Ruthie. Work has been really busy, so now I'm playing catch up with feedback, and this covers Terra Firma 1 and 2 and Su'Kal. I'm not a super fan of Terra Firma 1 and 2. I agree that the episodes feel shoved into place. They needed to wrap up the Georgiou storyline, and the show was quickly running out of season. Also, I don't understand Admiral Vance's reasoning. Back when Burnham went on her rogue mission to save Book, he was furious that Discovery's executive officer abandoned her post to save just one person. But now, with the Georgiou matter, he counsels Captain Saru that his crew would judge him negatively for not giving 100% support for a single person who is not officially a member of the crew. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but Georgiou seems to be more of an asset attached to Discovery because of her unique status than named as an official crew member listed on the ship's roster. You're not wrong. She's not an official member of the crew.
Yeah.
And this advice that he gives that the needs of this one person outweigh the needs of the many comes at a time of heightened tensions with the Emerald Chain that are on the verge of outright hostilities, where Discovery's unique spore drive makes her the most valuable asset in a fight. I think I can maybe shed some light on this. I think what he was upset about was that Burnham went off without permission, I guess. I mean, that's a big no-no. There's a chain of command for a reason. So I think that was the issue, since they're actually coming to Admiral Vance for his opinion / permission / advice / whatever you want to say. Then I think this is slightly a different story. He probably would have done the same thing had they gone through official channels previously. Or if Saru had made a decision on his own, as a captain should, then maybe I think that it might have been reacted to a little differently. But I feel like the main issue there was the whole going rogue, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think about that. If that answers any of your questions, Bob from Michigan. All right. Moving on. Furthermore, I'm confused as to why Georgiou gets special consideration from the Guardian. The Guardian said it went into hiding because of the abuse and misuse it was subjected to during the temporal wars. So much so that it even changes its appearance. Granted, the sphere data gives Burnham and Georgiou the location for a 5% chance of a cure, but why does the Guardian allow her to have this special evaluation of her humanity? To judge her growth? Why does Georgiou, out of the billions of beings in the galaxy, get this special chance? Just because Burnham and Georgiou found the Guardian and no one else has managed to? Seems kind of flimsy to me. Yeah, I can see your point there.
I don't know. I tend to think that she's like a special case because she's someone who has crossed universes and time. And I imagine that is not something that the Guardian would come across normally, so that's my take on it. Perhaps.
But as he said, out of the billions of beings in the galaxy, I mean, if the people on board and associated with or asset attached to the Discovery weren't special, then I guess we wouldn't be watching them. I don't know. That's the only thing I can say.
And we have to remember, of course, that without her going back in time, she doesn't get a new show.
Yeah.
So let's not question it too much.
I guess we can say because reasons.
We can say that for a lot of things.
Yep. And that's unfortunate. Anyway, moving on. He says, that said, I do believe we saw some of the best acting by our cast so far. Sonequa Martin Green absolutely killed it as her mirror universe self. I also loved Oyen Oladejo. I don't know how to pronounce that. Oyen. I also loved Oyen as Osyraa. Her intensity and fierce loyalty to her emperor stood out.
Yeah, I would agree.
As for episode 11, Su'Kal, I'm firmly in camp. As for episode 11, Su'Kal, I'm firmly in Camp Ruthie. Didn't like it. Again, some excellent individual performances by Doug Jones and Wilson Cruz were the highlight of the episode. What I didn't...
Did I not say that last week that once we got the feedback from everybody else, you would get a lot of support? And what do you know? You did.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
So we have more.
Yeah, okay. What I didn't like was the episode's story. It felt flat and stale, like a carbonated drink that has lost its fizz. I agree with the criticisms that were enumerated, so I won't relist them here. However, there was one in particular. I don't like the undertones that the story gave off about Saru, subtly implying that he is becoming too distracted and preoccupied with his Kelpian heritage to be in command or be the captain. I cry foul show. Foul. He has been built up and shown to be growing, maturing, and adapting as a captain to now suddenly give appearances of setting himself up for a command failure and a change in leadership. Again, I cry foul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you brought up a great point last week that I think it was you, that Saru left his people, like 20 years ago or whatever, to be a part of Starfleet.
Relatively speaking.
Right. Yeah. So and thought at the time that he'd never see his people again. So why is this suddenly an issue? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Only because he hasn't seen a Kelpian in this time. I don't know.
That's not true, though. I mean, well, in this timeline, I was going to say right before they left, he saw his sister. So, yay.
Right.
I don't know. You're right, Bob. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't like it either. It's irritating to me. Lastly, oh no. Grudge the Cat. I suddenly remembered the TOS episode Assignment Earth, a backdoor pilot that fell through, that had a character called Gary 7, and he had a cat named Isis that would transform into an alluring woman. I wonder if Grudge is the same, but we haven't seen it yet.
I hope for Burnham's sake that she isn't, because
that would be awkward.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Goodness gracious. Okay. Hopefully I'll get to watch the next episode this weekend. Your friend Bob from Michigan. I hope so too, Bob. And thank you for your support and feedback.
It doesn't look like it. I didn't see anything that would suggest that he did get it in time. So unless something comes in while we're recording, I don't think we heard from you, Bob. But that's okay. You can still get your feedback in, and we'll get it in for next week. But just want to remind everyone that next week will be our final episode. But please try to get in their feedback as early as possible, because if you don't, we may never, ever talk about it on the show. So just remind all of you, be quick and be early with your feedback. All right, next is fellow Brian from Colorado, formerly of Hawaii. And he had feedback on episode 57, which, of course, came out pretty late. Thankfully, I was able to get the last episode out a lot earlier. Don't know if I'll be able to this time around because I don't have Monday off, but we'll see. Anyway, he says, I just listened to the podcast. The reason I posed the question about Giorgio going to the time of first contact is because we know from the cold open of In a Mirror Darkly Part 1 that the Terran universe split at least as early as then. Carl specifically said she was going back to a time before the two universes split. I take this statement at face value, but I do acknowledge this contradicts what Glasses said earlier about how one's molecules have to exist in either the same time or place, implying she has to go back to her original time in either universe, prime or mirror. If that is the case, why did Carl say she's going back to the time before the two universes diverged? I'll be eagerly awaiting the Section 31 show to find out. Well, I don't know. I think you're implying that the universes diverged at the point of first contact, and I don't think that that's true.
That's not true.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be naming their emperors in the form of Roman Empire style. I think he implied that, he didn't imply that she would go back to the time that they split. He said that she would go back to before they started really diverging, I think, because now they're so far apart as to be not close to each other anymore. So it doesn't make any more sense other than she would go back to either her universe or her timeline. So she clearly does not want to go back to her universe. So she's going back to her timeline.
Yeah. And, one has to wonder when the universes fell out of parallel, because as far as
what caused that?
Yeah. Well, it could have been something like the Romulan supernova or, but I tend to think that she would be put back exactly what had been said, that she would be put back exactly at the time that she left the 2250s. So put her back at the time that she left. So, maybe she shows up on the Enterprise or something. And like I said before, she ends up being interrogated like everyone else. Or maybe it's just before that, or maybe it's just, I don't know. But it seems to me that makes the most sense. So put her there and she'll be fine. So I don't know.
I don't know either, but I do know that we're repeating ourselves.
Yeah. Okay, moving on.
All right, next we have Carol from Washington, D.C., who says, Ruthie, you are not alone. I was sad that I missed the feedback deadline, and especially when I hear that you think you are the only one. I give it a rating of 0. I'm listening to the episode now, so I'm waiting to hear all everyone has to say before I give my nose. I agreed with everything you said. Also annoyed that book exposed Grudge to lethal levels of radiation, and why exactly did Culber stay? Wouldn't going back and getting radiation treatment be the more reasonable choice? It would.
Probably would.
Yeah, it would.
And it's worth saying Carol's feedback there was kind of given to us in stages. So
all right.
It's not listed there as such, but there's one other thing that I want to say about the last episode, and that is that I got a chance to watch it again before this past episode. And, originally I gave it a 9.6 and then I, gave it a 9.2 while we were talking about it. But after I saw it again, I don't think it was as good as either rating. So I lower it to an 8 because it's a lot more of the things that Ruthie, you talked about in the episode really came out for me. And I don't know if I was like ignoring them first time through or what, but they were exposed a lot more. All right. Well, that is it for the feedback we got on previous episodes. So let's finally get into this episode because there's a lot to discuss. The penultimate episode, season 3, episode 12, titled There Is a Tide, is written by co-executive producer Kenneth Lynn and directed by Jonathan Frakes. Good old number 1. The description from CBS.com is as follows. After capturing the USS Discovery, Osyraa seeks a meeting with Admiral Vance while Burnham and the crew must overcome unimaginable odds as they attempt to regain command of their ship. This is TVMA with language. And there was a star date, actually, and you can see it on the armistice document that is presented. It's and it's mentioned on Memory Alpha, but in my last watch, I looked at it, and sure enough, it does give this star date, which makes no sense based on Burnham's previous star date. It is star date 29141429.1. Seems a little bit much, but anyway. The air date was December 31st, 2020 at 2:05 a.m. And that is the earliest I've seen an episode come out. So, but that's when I was able to access it and started to watch it, as 2:05 a.m. The runtime was 48 minutes and 1 second. And I have more about the title in the yeses section, and I'll explain that in my rating. So, all right, Ruthie, what would you give There Is a Tide as far as a rating?
I would take away the -2 that I added to last week's. I wasn't overly fond of this episode either, unfortunately. Better than last week, I'll say that. So that's why I'm taking away the -2.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Another one we don't agree on. I gave it a 9.75, and unfortunately I can't give my usual, like, whatever, because I ran into this problem all through this. I was able to, the way I watched this episode, I watched it 3 times, and each time I watched it, I was in front of the computer, and each time I watched it, I was putting in notes, which I almost never do. So for once, while I was doing this episode, I had good notes. And as I was copying feedback in, each little piece of feedback, one by one, got picked off. So even my rating got taken by somebody else. So anyway, it was kind of frustrating for me. So I can't think of another rating to give. I haven't had caffeine yet this morning, and I can't even think of what else to say. So I'm just giving it a 9.75. I loved it. So let's move on to listener ratings. Will from SoCal says, I rate this episode 8 out of 10. Osyraa used an old Trojan trick to enter Federation headquarters, and Admiral Vance failed to trust his intuition again.
Fortunately, that wasn't for very long.
Right.
I mean, when you have to make a split-second decision of let the ship be destroyed or let it in,
yeah,
that's like playing chicken. All right, Edwin from Arizona gives it a 9.6.
Jeff X-Force 11 gives it 9.5 kick butt cruise. And then he says, oh, Ruthie, when I hear Burnham's yes that Brian plays each week, I think, is that Ruthie? Smiley face. It could be you. Doesn't seem like it the last couple of episodes, though.
Oh, that's funny. That could be me, I guess. I don't know. All right, Aaron from Akron says, this episode was much better. I'll give it 10 dirty socialist confederations out of 10. It's like Starship Mine and Die Hard in the 32nd century.
Yep, exactly. It was like Die Hard, from going barefoot to hobbling around to something I had to remove. I'm sorry.
All right. Wes from Minnesota says, this episode was Die Hard in space, Discovery style. I enjoyed it even though it was the middle of a 3-part finale. Frakes directed it really well. I give There Is a Tide 9.85 rogue dots out of 10.
Brian from Colorado says, I love this episode and I give it 9.8 failed alliances. The unexpected twists in this episode were pure delight.
All right. LT from NC says, giving it a 9.2 out of 10. It's made of shit. I was going to use my favorite Die Hard line, come to the ghost, have a few laughs. But, you know, this episode really made up for last week for me.
Yes, and this rating stole 2 of the things that I had at the talks. That was going to be my rating, was 9.75 apples made of shit. Carol from Washington, D.C. says, much better than last week. Still not quite the disco tone that I fell for originally. 9 out of 10 Morse code finger taps.
All right. Rick from Cleveland says, now this is what I have come to expect from a Frakes episode. I rate this 9.5 out of 10 bad guys in bondage masks. Yikes.
Bad guys in bondage masks. We won't talk about that now, will we? Okay, so that's it for our ratings. So let's move on to our yeses.
Yes! All right. We have Will from SoCal who says, to Aurelio playing his true self in a wheelchair. To Tilly growing into her leadership role as she and Burnham attempt to take back the ship. To Sphere Data chipping in to help save Discovery.
Wes from Minnesota is next. And Wes, in the middle of your yeses, you hit upon a lot of things that other people also stated in their yeses, and so did I. So I interspersed their stuff in with yours and mine so that we only cover it once. And the first thing was, and I had this at the beginning about our title, we have reached Star Trek's 800th adventure, including the films and the short Treks episodes. And it is ironically titled after a Shakespearean play. I love it. Well, it's not actually a Shakespearean play, but what it is yes, in fact, that this is the 800th adventure episode or film or short Trek, whatever, of Star Trek. So that's pretty amazing. We have 800. And this is what I pulled out of the About section. This is another episode with a title that has its origin in Shakespeare. It probably relates to this quote from Julius Caesar, Act 4, Scene 3. There is a tide in the affairs of men, which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Amid all the voyage of their life is bound in shallows and in miseries. On such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current when it serves, or lose our ventures. I enjoyed the scenes with Admiral Vance and Osyraa. I actually believed her when she wanted the Emerald Chain and the Federation to form an alliance, and I thought it was wonderfully acted by Oded Fehr and Janet Kidder. And Brian from Colorado also said, seeing more depth with the Osyraa character. Her negotiation scenes with Vance were superb. The proposed alliance was quite reasonable too, but her ego got in the way. Yes, it did. LT from NC also said, the negotiations with Osyraa and Admiral Vance. We assumed that the Emerald Chain was just going to be another villain group, but this showed that they have a lot more than just slavery and manipulating trade goods going on. Makes me wonder, where the heck are the Ferengi in all of this? So I was reacting to this because I had this in my yeses as well. I said peace and armistice. That was a surprise. I thought, as I was watching this the first time, and like I said, I was taking notes each time I watched it, and I said, oh, this has to be a ploy, but it ended up it wasn't. And then I thought, well, maybe she can mask her true emotions or intentions here. And then it's like, no, not that either. And I thought the use of Eli was interesting, but then I started thinking, well, it was used last time when they brought in the Discovery crew, I guess, to make sure that they weren't lying. So I guess it made sense for that. But I loved how really only Osyraa lied about one thing, and that was that the person that she'd put in charge wouldn't be a puppet, essentially. But Vance bringing up that Osyraa must stand trial for her crimes was astute, and I thought a masterstroke to bring out her true intentions. And I think that her intentions were largely good, but the fact that she would not allow herself to lose control was kind of like her Achilles heel. But if you think about it, who could lead? Like, let's say if what's his name, Zara, Jake Weber character. Can you imagine what things would be like if he ran the Emerald Chain? I would think things would be even more brutal and, just more sleazy. I don't know. But I thought it was interesting when Osyraa said this. She says, "You are a chain of planets. We are a federation of mercantile exchanges." I think she chose those words carefully to show that they weren't all that different. So that's my take on it. Next, he says, "I knew we hadn't seen the last of Zara. You don't just leave a random pirate who's a part of a larger group down." And I said, as soon as he popped up in the previously on, I knew we were going to see a lot of him because he was in a lot of it. The first, several things we see, it's all him. And then pretty much everyone had to say something about this. Oh, Anthony Rapp in this episode, holy crap, especially in that last scene with Michael. That was powerful. And Brian from Colorado also said, speaking of emotion, the scenes with Stamets and Burnham, wow. LT from NC also said, Anthony Rapp just blew the doors off this week, and this was way more depth and emotion than we have ever seen out of Stamets. And the scene with Burnham was just gut-wrenching. It was. And I knew someone else was going to bring this up. Definitely, I think that this was Anthony Rapp's best performance to date. The scenes with Mitchell, Aurelio, and Sonequa playing Burnham were some of the most powerful scenes I've seen in any Star Trek series, especially, when he says, "My whole life is in that nebula." Yeah. That was powerful. And I immediately got a tear in my eye. And I'll have more on her, Burnham, in my yeses. But I thought he was fantastic in this episode.
He did do really well.
Yeah. All right, next.
All right, Brian from Colorado, who says, I also liked that the Emerald Chain scientist was an actor with ALS. He represented that disability with such earnestness and depth of emotion, especially when his eyes were opened to Osyraa's true nature.
Mm-hmm.
And LT from NC also said, Kenneth Mitchell acting his ass off, even when they had to work around his ALS. He was phenomenal. And it was also so good to see him without prosthetics.
Yep. And if you don't know, of course, he played Cole Shah, and Tenavik, Klingon trio there in seasons 1 and 2 of Discovery. It's nice to see him on Discovery, not as a Klingon, playing Invigilator. Aurelio, is that how you say it? I had to look up what Invigilator meant, and it is the American equivalent to a proctor at a university. And essentially, it's someone to supervise students, but it's often used as someone who watches examination candidates to prevent cheating, which is kind of funny because,
I'm not sure I've ever heard that word before in my life.
No.
I have heard proctor, though, so I'm not sure why they are saying that's American equivalent to a proctor, because being American, I've never heard that word, but I have heard proctor.
Well, it's when I looked it up in both the dictionary and Wikipedia, it comes up in the reference to proctor in Wikipedia. It's basically, they say that it's equivalent to proctor, what they call a proctor in the United States. LT from NC is next, and we already gave some of his feedback, but for yeses, but the ones that other people didn't catch. It is good to know that even in the future, cadets have to learn Morse code. And he says, I liked the fight in the Jeffries tube, and I guess the regulator who got sucked out into space can be Hans Gruber, in keeping with the Die Hard theme, since Michael did get to run around with the bloody bare feet. Yes, I thought of that too, because that was, in the case of McClane in Die Hard, he, had bloody bare feet because he had to step in glass. And
because he had taken his shoes off because of some guy on the plane who said, take your shoes off and curl your toes. It helps.
Yeah.
So he didn't put his shoes back on. That's why he was running around barefoot, not because somebody tore his shoes off.
Yeah.
But still, I wonder if they realized what they were doing while they were making the episode.
I think so.
How could they not?
Yeah. I mean, there was so many parallels to Die Hard. Like, some people mentioned Starship Mine, and I could see Starship Mine, but especially Die Hard, you know?
Yeah. I didn't think of it until I read that, though, and I was like, oh, yeah. I wasn't thinking of it, even though I had just seen that movie on Christmas Day.
It's funny. It's too bad that in the way that the episodes went, if this episode had aired last week, it would have been like a Die Hard, like, on Christmas Eve, just like the actual Die Hard, took place on Christmas Eve.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
All right. Next.
Edwin from Arizona says, Tilly stepping up.
Carol from Washington, D.C. says, oh, fighting skills on display, just like in the Mirror Universe. Yep. Actually, the whole bridge crew getting the fight was cool. Then she says, all the Aurelio scenes, big kudos to the actor whose story I'm sure will be shared on the pod. Yep, already did. The sphere data in the little robots giving the Vulcan hello. Not hello, but the salute. That was a great moment. The early comment that there's one bit of code we can't delete seems to be early 20th century entertainment. That made me smile. And then we see like the face show up on screen, and I don't know, I guess that's Buster Keaton. I don't know, but obviously it was the sphere data. So, and then of course we see that later on too.
Yep. All right. Rick from Cleveland says, yes for Tilly standing her ground and being an imperfect but kick-ass captain. Yes for the bridge crew working together to escape. Morse code is eternal. Yes for crash landing Book's ship in the shuttle bay. This had a Star Trek V feel to it, but in a good way. At least I think it was Star Trek V where they crashed a shuttle into the shuttle bay to avoid getting hit by a bird of prey.
It was. In fact, I thought of that too. So good for you to bring that one up. Yeah.
Yes, on the chain scientist. I very much enjoyed the introduction of this character. He shows the potential for something greater to come when there is an eventual agreement between the Federation and the chain. Yes, for Stamets considering Adira to be his child. I love the family dynamic that is evolving here. I hope Adira feels the same way.
All right, so that is it for our listener yeses. Do you have any yeses?
Nothing that I wrote down specifically. I'm sure there were things I liked about the episode. I just can't remember them off the top of my head.
Well, I have some additional yeses that I've got here. I thought that the cold open was phenomenal. Like, just got mentioned about the crash landing. I thought that crash landing into Discovery was amazing. Aurelio and Stamets bonding just a little bit, at least, over Opera. But then Aurelio turning his back on Stamets was some nice understated acting. And we talked about Anthony Rapp's acting in this episode, but there's one thing that I liked when he said, I believe you when you say she's more than she appears to be, but she is also exactly what she appears to be.
Yeah.
Because that is a very accurate description of her. Because there's layers to her that I didn't realize were there until this episode, but and then in the same way, she's exactly the mustache twirling villain that I thought she was. So
I liked that Admiral Vance caught on to what was going really quickly.
Yeah.
If anything, I would say he's probably the one shining star in this episode.
Yeah.
I really like Oded Fair anyway, so it's not hard for me to like him, but I was really appreciative of the fact that like I said, he had to make a split decision about what to do. And I mean, he's basically playing chicken with the Discovery, and he had to make a split decision about, do I let them get crushed or do I let them in? And I think he absolutely made the right decision, because even if you think that there's a slim chance that they're on the ship, you have to do something. You can't just let them die like that. I mean, what if it turns out he was wrong? How would you be able to live with yourself? So I feel like that was the correct decision for him. But he's already, has that niggling feeling of something ain't right here. And I was appreciative that they didn't drag out his ignorance too long. That would have really irritated me even more than I was irritated. So that's probably my biggest yes.
Yeah. And, I mentioned this to you at one point this week about, if there was any doubt about Vance being on the Federation side, I know some people mentioned in the past, I think those thoughts have to be completely gone at this point, because he represented the Federation very well in this episode. And I agree with you that he was really, really good in this episode. I'd say pretty much second to Anthony Rapp in just like his performance here. When Aurelio saw the true nature of Osyraa, or I guess you could say the other half of her, that was heartbreaking. But you kind of knew that's what he was going to see if he was willing to stay there. So I don't know if he just didn't want to believe that she was that bad, but that's what he was going to see.
I think that was sort of him unwilling to turn a blind eye, I guess, which made me like the character a little bit more, because I think a couple of things. I think he really didn't think, like you said, he really didn't think that he would see that. But what Stamets said to him about what happened in Quajon, I think really struck a nerve with him. And I feel like he's a true scientist because he's unwilling to turn a blind eye and just carry on with the status quo. Stamets made some claims, and I think that he wanted to see if it was true. Costs be damned. And so I sort of admired that about him, that he wasn't willing to just keep looking the other way.
Yeah.
Because if he were, he would have just been like, all right, peace, I'm out. But he clearly stayed because I think, like I said, I think he didn't, like you said, I think he didn't really think he would see that, but he really wanted to know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think probably what Stamets said to him also, like he had to see it for himself, so the things like how he said that the pesticide, ended up, causing the extinction of another species on the planet or something like that.
And it's clear that he doesn't actually know, because he said that must be an oversimplification,
right,
or an overstatement, or whatever he said,
right?
Not that it was. So he clearly had no idea of what was actually happening, or the other side of her true nature.
Right. I want to highlight Burnham, and there was some talk about her being unwilling to make the hard call, and her also being a rogue and whatnot earlier in the season. Burnham definitely made a hard call this episode, and man, was it a hard call to send Stamets back to Federation headquarters in that bubble. I thought that was amazing. It was amazing acting, but it was also just like, it was a classic example of the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few or the one, because she was basically doing it because she realized that as long as Osyraa had Stamets, she had Discovery, and as long as she had Discovery, it would put the Federation in peril and could lead to its destruction, because if Osyraa could find a way to operate the spore drive and replicate it and put it into other ships, that would be it for the Federation and probably other worlds too. So it was tough because she knew that it could lead to Saru, Culber, and Adira's deaths, but 3 deaths over the death of the Federation, I think, was a hard call that she had to make. And I think she made the right call, but it was a really tough call to make.
I think not only that, she was respecting their wishes. They chose to stay knowing the consequences.
Yes.
So it's not just that she was making this decision, because she wasn't making the decision necessarily. I mean, They had already chosen, and they knew what would happen. And they knew that it wasn't a sure thing that Discovery would be able to just pop back in and get them. I mean, maybe they were hoping for that, and hope is a powerful thing. But I think not only that, Stamets is clearly not thinking clearly, because how exactly is he going to do this with a ship that's taken over by people who aren't his people?
Right.
And I mean, to me, I'm like, he was being very, it wasn't exactly a low blow per se, but he was definitely throwing verbal barbs out there.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that's really, really harsh and total guilt trip, which generally gets the opposite reaction out of me. I don't really like people trying to guilt trip me into things. But that to me just illustrates the fact that he's not thinking clearly, and his desperation. He's trying to do something that I don't think would work, and might end up adversely harming everyone else, and might not even save them. I don't know. I didn't think that he was really dealing with a full deck, I guess. So to
You're right. And I think that he was oversimplifying things, because Discovery had to go into the future. That was the whole point. And it couldn't get to the future without going separately. So, like, what was she going to do? Like, take a tractor beam and pull Discovery in herself? Of course she couldn't. So someone had to stay behind. So, someone had to fly the ship in. So I don't think Burnham could have done that. And I don't think an autopilot could have done that either. I think someone had to fly the ship. And, could there have been less people that came to the 32nd century? Yes, but I don't think that it would have worked out as well. So,
well, and I also think, honestly, by doing that, you're kind of, that's like, I understand what he's going through, but that is just the worst, in my opinion, because you're completely negating what you did. No one forced you to do it. No one twisted your arm or guilt tripped you into going into the future. You chose to do that. And now you're coming back and saying, we did this for you. Now you do something for me. That's kind of,
yeah,
that's just completely negating that act. And I know that he doesn't really mean it, and he's just throwing things out there to get his way, really.
Yeah.
But kudos to Burnham for being stalwart in her decision about choosing to save his life and save the lives of all the people in the Federation. Because regardless of what that scientist thinks, I'm pretty sure that Osyraa wouldn't hesitate to off him if that meant getting what she wanted.
Yeah.
So,
and for that matter, if Aurelio was able to grow the tardigrade DNA or whatever, grow the tardigrade, then we would definitely, she'd have no real use for Stamets anymore. Like, she wouldn't need Stamets anymore. Other pilots could be used, or they'd come up with an artificial pilot. I don't know, but that's my take.
Yeah,
just a cool factor thing. I noticed that they were automatically beaming from one floor to the other in Federation headquarters. I thought that was kind of cool. Burnham tells Book that she loves him in her sleep. I kind of love that. I don't know why, but The Morse code tapping reminded me of a couple things. There was some kind of communication that was going on with the officers in the Starship Mine episode. So it reminded me of that, but it also reminded me of another TNG episode, Menage a Troy, when Riker sent those Algolian ceremonial rhythms in modulated interference as a way for the Enterprise to recognize where they were, and specifically that Wesley Crusher was able to figure that out. So it just reminded me of that. And the last thing, I think, was also a good decision to not feature anything about Saru, Culber, and who I'm now calling Tantrum Man Boy in this episode, since that was where most of the problems that people had, including both of us, but I guess especially you, last episode. So I appreciated not seeing that side of things this time.
That made no impact on my feeling about this episode whatsoever, because they've already dug that hole, so now they have to deal with it. In fact, it probably didn't help any, because I feel like I started watching this episode at a great deficit, and it had a lot to dig itself out of, and I just don't think it did.
All right, so now it is time for our nose. No. Will from SoCal says, Toulouse Rin. And then he says, to baby Huey causing the burn, Star Trek writers can do better. And my reaction to that was, wasn't this a more appropriate no for the last episode and not this one? It's like, okay, it's a no. It's definitely a no, but it seems like that no was for last episode. I don't know.
All right. Wes from Minnesota says, the Federation's replicated food is recycled from their crap. I honestly thought Vance's delivery of the line about where it comes from was hilarious, but no, really? Seriously? The window has been shattered. Brian from Colorado says, I also didn't want to hear where the replicators got their atoms. Oh my gosh. Honestly, you guys, where did you think it came from? I mean, you can't get something out of nothing.
That was my take on it as well. It's like, didn't you ever think about it? I don't know. I'm sorry. Maybe it's because I like poop humor, but I enjoyed this one. I mean, where would they get the material for a replicator? I mean, my issue with it, if I had to give one, was you would think Vance would have had a real apple at some point. Like, we see there were organic ships. Like, we see that one ship where the whole saucer section, is like nothing but a forest or something like that. And because Tilly mentions that in Die Trying Season 3, Episode 5. So I don't get it. Why wouldn't he have had an apple at some point?
No idea.
Brian from Colorado says, I wanted the negotiation to be successful. And, I'm not surprised. Like, the things that were brought up were reasonable, but of course they were brought up by a terrorist, or a pirate, I guess is more accurate. So how do you, like, if it had been another leader from the Emerald Chain, maybe it would have gone through, but still.
Doubtful.
Yeah.
I mean, if she had truly wanted peace, then she would have given herself up if that's what she really wanted.
Yeah.
But it's not. So.
Yeah. Then he says, it was heartbreaking that Burnham had to hurt Stamets by not letting him jump the ship. And I just said, heartbreaking, yes, but I wouldn't put this as a no. Like, that to me was good TV. So I don't think that's a no for me, but that's,
yep.
You're entitled to your no if that's what you think. So.
Agreed. All right. Rick from Cleveland says no on the premise of Discovery getting into headquarters. Wrath of Khan rules apply here. Communication had not been established. You raise shields in HQ and send some support ships to deal with the attacking chain ship.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with what you're talking about, but I don't know. They didn't really leave them much choice, but that's more because of the way that they set up their HQ.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's it for our listener knows. Ruthie, I'm almost don't want to ask, but what are your no's?
I didn't really like how Burnham got injured. I thought to myself, she's a better fighter than this. She should have known that he was going for a blade because, I mean, surely when she's a better fighter than that. He's going for a blade. We have to get her injured somehow. We'll just have her ignore that he's going for this blade or not somehow be completely unaware of this. I don't know how, but we need it for the story. So, because reasons. I was disappointed in that.
Yeah, she exposed her leg, definitely.
She exposed her leg, but shouldn't she have seen? I mean, she's trying to choke him out. Shouldn't she have seen or been prepared for some kind of counterattack? Like seen him, like his arm reaching out. Like when you're trying to take someone down, you're completely focused on them and what they are doing. So when this guy reaches for a knife, I mean, I just didn't buy it. It really irritated me. I thought the episode started off well, but then that kind of brought me down.
I would agree. I didn't think that this was the best. Like it didn't have to go down the way that it did. So, and her getting stabbed was also not the best.
Lazy writing.
What else do you have?
Why does Osyraa have so much information about this ship? Why does she know that they can't replicate the spore drive? I mean,
that's a good question.
It's not like they're chatty. It's not like they call Osyraa up and, hey, we're having problems with replicating this spore drive. Just wanted to let you know so that you have something to throw in our face at our fake negotiation.
And the only thing I could ascertain from that was either she has people on the inside, which wouldn't surprise me, but we haven't seen them yet, or they haven't been exposed yet, or that she figured that out once she took over Discovery. But I don't know. Those are good points.
Then I have to go back to how did she know exactly where the spore drive was in order to beam directly into Stamets's space?
Well, that's what makes me think that she's got an insider on the Federation, like somebody like Lieutenant Willa or somebody like that. Like she probably had the plans for Discovery somewhere sent to her. So that's what I'm thinking. She's got like an undercover agent or something working to get those things.
Of course, that's possible. However,
yeah, it's possible, but it's also not explained. So,
seems unlikely. Also,
okay.
I don't know. I just don't think it's.
What else you got?
The other regulator in the Jeffries tube. We saw two. We saw the chick and we saw another Andorian. What happened to him?
Oh.
Why didn't he get Michael Burnham? I mean,
that's a good question.
Was he just in the completely wrong Jeffries tube, which makes no sense because they knew exactly where she was? So.
Well, my thought was that, he was in one Jeffries tube and the other person was in the other, and that Burnham was in like some junction between the two. And when she did what she did, it cut off access to, the other Jeffries tube. That's what I'm thinking, but I don't know. Honestly, I totally forgot about the Andorian until you just brought him up.
And I have to admit, I was only half paying attention to my rewatch, so I don't know. I mean, what you say could have been what happened, but they didn't show him at all. So I kind of thought
they didn't.
That was convenient.
That is why I didn't even think of that guy. So
Yeah. I didn't really understand why Book and Rin stayed behind, because they were clearly setting themselves up for failure. It didn't make any sense to leave themselves open to recapture and thus giving them more leverage. So what was the reason why they stayed behind? To give them a head start?
I think so.
That didn't make any sense. That didn't make any sense whatsoever. They could have easily come with them.
Yeah.
Do you want to die? Do you want to get tortured? Do you want to get recaptured? Because that's exactly what's going to happen if you don't all leave. And when you do that, you're not giving them an advantage. You're putting all of them in danger, because they will, there's no strategic advantage to leaving those people behind whatsoever. Everyone goes. That way they've got no one. They have no leverage. They should have. I don't know why it took them so long to get out of the ready room, honestly. And I thought that they were leaving through some hatch, but it looked like they went through a door, and I didn't understand that, because Tilly said something about get this hatch open. It leads to blah, 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 something I can't remember. But it looked to me like they exited through a door.
Yeah.
So I was like, what just happened? If they had actually gone out through that hatch, then everybody should have left. Because you know what kind of people you're dealing with. So leaving people behind just means you're leaving people that can be used against us in the future. Like you're leaving hostages that will be killed so that we will surrender. And so either you're willing to surrender right now, or you don't give them that opportunity.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's just what I would have done. Like, you're the best chance that Michael has, blah, blah, blah. Well, yes, that's true. But the reason why Book stayed behind the first time, good reason, made sense. Completely understandable. He only has one doohickey. He doesn't know the ship as well. She should be the one to go. And I thought it was kind of funny, and I appreciated the whole go save the day thing, because I felt like they were sort of like acknowledging that they do that a lot. And so I thought, okay, this is going to be good. But then the whole stabby thing, and I was like, ugh. And also, it's a no for me. Osyraa is just a no for me. She's not scary, I think, because she can't really emote with that thing on her head. Like, everybody talks about how great she's doing, and I personally don't see it, because I'm like, it makes her face look weird, and I feel like she can't really move her mouth. Like, I see her talking on the ready room, and I'm like, I don't understand why they can't see it. That it's not doing her any favors. Her prosthetic.
I don't understand the prosthetic as it is. So
I don't either.
Why is it necessary?
I don't either. Is she allergic to makeup?
I don't know, because the other Orions that we've seen also had a strange look to them. So I think it wasn't just her, but it was like all of the Orions. I just don't understand why. I don't know.
I don't know.
Must be a reason. There must be a reason.
I think that they think there's a reason, but it clearly doesn't work. So it's not a very good reason.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for me. And I don't know if you've ever seen Farscape, but
bits and pieces of it.
Oh, it's so good. There were reasons why, she didn't, I can't remember her name right now off the top of my head, but the blue woman, I'm sorry for everyone who is mad at me right now because I can't remember her name. She was not on the show as much. Like, she started being on the show a little bit less because the makeup was causing her serious problems. And I can completely understand that. They need to find a way to keep people safe and yet still do their makeup. But you also need to find a way to keep people safe and do the makeup believably, because I can't get into her. Every time I see her face, I feel like an uncanny valley type thing because I can't quite tell what's wrong with her. And so it puts me off, and I'm like, it takes me out of it. It completely takes me out of it. And so maybe better makeup is the solution. But I don't think a prosthesis is the solution. I don't know if there's a way to make makeup better, but I mean, they have made steps forward in making makeup hypoallergenic and all kinds of things to where it doesn't irritate the skin as much. I don't know why they can't do the same for stage makeup. So I don't know. I'm just trying to explain. I'm not trying to advocate that they need to put people in danger or make them uncomfortable to do their parts. But what they are doing doesn't work for me. And every time she shows up on screen, I'm like, eh.
I agree with you. I noticed it a lot more in, doing the rewatch of last week and this week. Like there were some certain parts like where there were close-ups where it, like you say, it just didn't look like she was emoting, and it has to be the prosthesis.
Yeah, it does weird things to her mouth. And so every time she talks, I'm like, what's wrong with your face? That's all I could think. I don't know. It takes me out of it. And yeah. So like I said, I get the whole makeup can be irritating or whatever thing, but this is not the way.
This is not the way. I know where that the opposite of that comes from. That's a Mandalorian thing, and no, I still haven't seen it yet.
Wasn't exactly what I was getting at, but yeah. I mean, it was not on purpose, I will say.
What else do you have?
Anything? I'm sure I'll probably agree with whatever you've got.
I think you will too. This is something that really wasn't well handled. The idea that the people within the Emerald Chain are good, like all we see of the Emerald Chain up until this point is that there are a bunch of pirates and a lot of bad people running things. The idea that there are the people that are, within the Emerald Chain besides this are good, that there's like all this culture, science, and, stuff going on within the Emerald Chain, that is never mentioned in the season prior to this episode. So I think that they needed to sell that, like, essentially, in a lot of ways, it's like a good people that is ruled by a bad, few, and not this terrible thing. I don't know. It just, I didn't think that was well handled.
I agree. That sort of came out of left field.
Yeah.
I'm like, as far as I know, these are a group of pirates who subjugate people and bully them into accepting their gifts, if you will, of mercantilism and mercantile exchange, blah, blah, blah stuff. And I just, it kind of came out of left field. Like, what?
Yeah, like the stuff about Deep Space 253 trading with the mercantile exchange and acknowledging the capitalism and stuff like that. To me, that makes a lot of sense. Like I bought. I would think the Ferengi, if they were running the Emerald Chain, which that's why I'm wondering, like, where were the Ferengi? Where are the Ferengi in all this?
That makes so much more sense than having an Andorian Orion syndicate. I mean, I don't understand. I guess another issue I have is none of this season makes sense. Mm-hmm. These people who were founding members of the Federation are no longer in it. I'm like, right. What the hell happened? I keep waiting for more explanations about why these people bounced out of the Federation, and I still haven't gotten it. And now we're kind of down to the wire, and I guess I'm not gonna. And that is just really disappointing to me. I'm like, it seems like they've built it up to where the Federation are the boogeymen of the galaxy, when really it's the Emerald Chain who appears to be the boogeymen of the galaxy. So why are they acting like the Federation, you need to acknowledge that our culture is valid? I'm like,
we haven't seen any example of their culture. I mean,
we haven't seen any example that they wouldn't do that. So why is this a sticking point? I'm like, yeah. And like you said, we haven't seen any example of their culture at all. I'm like, when she said that I put this whatever proposition before the, I can't even remember what word she used, the people, the Congress, basically, I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
They have a Congress or a whatever word. I was like, again, completely out of left field.
I was thinking it was like a pirates guild or something.
Yeah, I'm like, am I watching Pirates of the Caribbean again or something? And they've got their little confab where I don't know how many movies you've seen, if any, but I was like, this is just completely, I don't even know what to say.
Yeah. It just, the more I keep thinking about this, the more I have to keep thinking, like, where are the Ferengi in all of this?
It's it would make so much more sense that the Ferengi joined with someone to form, they wouldn't call it the Emerald Chain, I guess. I don't know, the ear chain or something. I have no idea. The lobe chain. I don't know.
Well, I could understand the Ferengi and the Orions being together because they were both traders. They had a lot of similarities there. I think the Orions were like more shifty and more in the end than the Ferengi were, considering the directions they were going in. Although even the Orions were becoming less sketchy because we see Tendi and Lower Decks. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. That is one criticism that I have of the season in general. And your point being like these Federation worlds just leaving founding worlds. Yeah, I don't get that either, but that's more of a criticism for the whole season than the one episode.
Well, at some point in time, you got to bring it up. And since we're at second to last, might as well be now.
Yep.
Especially if it's adversely affecting my enjoyment of that episode.
Fair enough. Speaking of not enjoying the episode, their technology is so great. Why couldn't they fix Zara's arm? Why couldn't they grow a new arm? Like, why was his arm basically, like disabled or, gangrenous or whatever was going on with, you had obviously
it looked like gangrene. It was it was a severe case of frostbite for real. I don't know. Punishment? That's the only thing I can think of.
I don't know. It's just, I didn't buy that. To me, that would be fixable, especially in the 32nd century. So,
especially with the way that she's touting there, I've got the best scientists.
And it has not been like it that didn't happen yesterday. Like, there've been some time. They've been in the 32nd century for
it's been a little while.
At least a few months. Yeah. So, that to me, it didn't ring true. The last thing, it's just a stupid thing. I guess, we always have to have this kind of trope, but the dumbass that Burnham fights is trying to pull an old badge off the memorial. Like, I know that having an old badge is probably pretty valuable, but I thought, come on, you're going to do that now? Like, in the middle of, while all that stuff is going on, you're going to do that right now? Like, I just didn't buy that. That was really stupid of the guy to do that.
Well, I mean, I guess I would say the only thing I can say about that is that they probably don't have quality people. So he was probably bored. So he was probably like, I got nothing better to do while I'm sitting here watching what he assumes is a secure ship. So, but yeah, it was sort of tropey.
Yep. All right. That's it for my nose. So unless you have anything to add.
I didn't really like the whole regulators thing. I thought, are we in the old West again? What's going on here? Just didn't really work for me. Plus, something in the ready room that was said about them, I was like, no.
Oh, that they're like the Borg?
Yes. I was like, you've got to be effing kidding me.
I think it was more like what was said, like, what you want is irrelevant or something like that. I think that was last week.
I don't think so. He said something about them being scary like them with their helmets and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what?
Yeah, I can't agree.
They said a few things on the ready room that I was like, no.
No.
So, anyway.
All right, let's move on to our Hold Your Horses.
Hello, this is Captain Tilly. What the hell? What the hell? Hold your horses.
Will from SoCal says, please hold my horse. Book and Michael were able to catch up to Discovery, which just jumped. Wait for it, by using a hyper-fast courier tunnel? What the hell?
Yeah. I sort of thought, are they using the transwarp tunnels or whatever?
That's what it seemed like, but they didn't call it that. But the one thing I noticed when they came through is that it was, I don't know if it was Tino or if it was Willa that said it, but they are extending subspace. And I was like, extending subspace? What the heck? I mean, the thing I liked about it was all the junk in that corridor, but I kept thinking to myself, why wouldn't you, like, I don't know, get the equivalent of a 32nd century magnet and just like drag the stuff all out of
I did not like having all the junk there because I thought, really? If this is the fastest way to travel right now and we're short on dilithium, why would you not clean that out?
Yeah.
That's just...
Exactly. That was a thing that I didn't get, so.
Yeah. I mean, there has to be some reason why people want dilithium so bad and can't get around that fast.
I mean, think of all the apples they could make with all that stuff.
Yeah. I just... that you're right, Will. That is definitely a head scratcher. I didn't like it.
I didn't like it either.
All right, Wes from Minnesota, who says, Aurelio, played by veteran Discovery actor Ken Mitchell. I thoroughly enjoyed his performance, but I think I'll hold off on how I feel about his character next week to see whether or not I truly liked it. I understand.
I thought his performance was really good, but yeah, I mean, I want to see where the character goes. Brian from Colorado says, I thought the sphere data was immense, but they said it didn't take up much memory. And I'm guessing that's because the sphere data had already hidden itself within the .23s.
Yep.
But then he says, are .23s what the .7s become over 900 years? And if so, why do they look so similar to the old model? Yes, and for that matter, why only 16 new versions in over 900 years? I would have expected like .230 or, since we had a .253 or a space, Deep Space 253 or even a .1000, but not no .23. That means only 16 in 900 years. That's just, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't have any. I mean, I guess the only thing I could say is, well, if you've come up with a model that works, don't fix it.
Yeah, maybe they, like the iPhones do, where they had like, first they have the 3G and then the 3S, or I forget how the first couple versions of it were kind of weird in the numbering. So maybe it's like that. I don't know.
They got weird with the numbering later on. The numbering for the iPhone was pretty steady, standard, up until they started adding the S's.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Exactly.
but that was like, it was iPhone 2, then iPhone 3G, and they only said 3G because 3G network.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it was just the iPhone 3. And then it was like 4 and then 5. And I cannot remember when they added S, but I think it was 6. They started coming up with an S.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it was like 6S, 7S. And then they had 8S and they had 8 Plus. And now they skipped 9 and went to X. And it's really 10. But I mean, it has an X there. So I always think of it as iPhone X.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to 11, but I'm on 12 now.
Yeah, they had 11.
Did they have an 11?
Yeah, they had a 10 and then they had a 10S.
And well, they had a 10S, they had a 10 Pro or a 10 Max or a 10 Plus.
Yeah.
I don't know. They had, but now it's like you can get a 12 Pro, a 12 Pro Max, a 12 Max, or a 12, or you can get
mini.
Something. Yeah, the mini. I'm like, so many things that I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want the regular 12. I just want the regular 12. and that's
how is
what
the 12
I got
so far?
I like it okay. It's a little frustrating when I'm out trying to use my phone because there's no Touch ID anymore. It's all Face ID. But when I'm out, I can't really use the Face ID because I'm wearing a mask. So I'm sure they thought that it would be fine to get rid of the Touch ID, but now I really wish they had kept it because I could at least open my phone when I can't even, when I've got my helmet on, sometimes I can't even open my phone. So
I don't think when they came up with Face ID and eliminated touch, I don't think they realized that COVID would be a thing.
Obviously they did not. They would not have gotten rid of Touch ID, but
Brian's last Hold Your Horses, he says, does the sphere data fit within their memory completely? And my thought on that is that they are networked together. So, that's probably, the sphere data is shared across all the .23s. And it's I'm sure not just those 3. Like those were the 3 representatives.
Right.
And
I also I got the feeling that it was probably all of the .23s had sphere data in them at this point in time.
Yeah. Like, I'm sure there was some redundancy there, but I think that, it's kind of like they're in a RAID configuration. You want to
That's funny.
Use that. All right. So next.
All right. Next, we have LT from NC who says, so where did all the crap in the warp conduit come from? Did Starfleet ships use transwarp and then get fried during the burn?
I tend to think so.
I guess.
Yeah.
But I didn't understand how they said that they wouldn't be able to make it through this one ship, but then they did.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times there's just way too much hyperbole. We'll never be able to make it. And then we do because reasons. Okay. He goes on to say we have 1 episode to go. And now they finally decide to pay off the toasters we saw in the credits all season. He said toasters.
I totally even forgotten about them as as something that was in the credits until they pop up and like, oh yeah, they're in the credits. I knew that they had to have some kind of meaning, but I had forgotten about them. So, yeah.
All right. Since Michael called her mom, are we going to get a ship full of ninja Nivarian nuns to save the day? Say that 3 times fast.
Yeah, I had this. This was my one Hold Your Horses that I wrote down. I said I was very surprised that Burnham's distress call was sent to her mom. I don't know what she could do. Do they even have the ability to get to Federation headquarters? Do they even know where the headquarters is? Like, it just, I didn't understand why she called them. Like, it does, of course, set up a, much like they did in Picard, where, Picard sends out this distress call and you don't think that the Federation heard it. And so the nuns will come to save the day, but I don't know. I don't get that as a thing. So
I sort of hope that doesn't happen because I really kind of just wanted it to be Michael's calling her mom.
Yeah.
And she kind of has to explain why she's calling her. Hey, crap's going down, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll see if Mama Burnham shows up, but I'm not sure how she would be able to show up, like you say. Why is it Mr. Regulator's black hand reminded me of Mr. Deeds? That was funny, LT. And I guess he was not so badly gimped up that he wore a glove some of the time after the big hand wave, literally in front of Tilly. That's funny, LT.
I have to admit, I don't get the reference.
In Mr. Deeds, he had frostbite on his foot, and it was like a black foot. Or one of the characters did. I can't remember which character it was. I think it was the guy who, oh my gosh, I can't remember his name now right off the top of my head. Anyway, the butler character, I believe, in Mr. Deeds it was either him or Adam Sandler. I honestly can't remember which one had the black foot. I just remember the black foot reveal. So I know exactly what you're talking about, LT. That was funny. All right. They have around 50 minutes to either stick the landing or set up one big cliffhanger for next season. We went from running out of runway to landing on an aircraft carrier to that Yosemite Sam high dive into a glass of water. Yep.
Now I know why I didn't get that reference. I've never seen that movie.
What, Mr. Deeds?
Yeah.
Oh.
I've seen most of Adam Sandler's movies, but for some reason I've never seen that one.
I personally think it's one of his better ones. It's funny. There are some of his movies that I'm like, no. That other people claim are his best that I completely disagree with. But anyway.
The Wedding Singer?
Nope. I liked that one. I did not like Happy Gilmore, and I did not like some of the other early ones. I enjoyed The Wedding Singer quite a lot. I also really enjoyed The Waterboy.
Yeah, I like those two. I think those are probably my two favorites. But anyway.
There's another one in addition to Happy Gilmore that I can't remember that I was like, just no. Grown, no. But he's put out some really great movies too, in addition to his, shall we say, childish movies. All right. So just where is the president of the Federation? Out playing golf on Ryza?
I'm starting to wonder if perhaps the president of the Federation is in fact Vance.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure there is a president of the Federation, honestly.
You know, because that's, to me, that makes the most sense. But like, I had one thing that I didn't understand. It's mentioned somewhere in here. I could swear it's mentioned. I haven't seen it. Oh, that's right. It's in the voicemail. So we'll get to that when it comes, but it is mentioned. I'll hold off talking about it right now. All right. Edwin from Arizona says, why didn't Burnham just stun the person holding onto her leg?
It's an excellent question. She had the phaser from her sleeve thing that we learned about in the ready room.
I mean, the guy, he wasn't killed because we see him later. So, I mean, I don't know.
I don't know either. It's an excellent question, Edwin. We have no answers. I don't know why she got stabbed either. All right. Carol from Washington, D.C. says, Book and Burnham catching up with the spore drive using Disco so fast. How? A courier route? How fast can that go? Did Osyraa spend a week taking over all the Discovery systems?
No, I don't think so.
Nope.
I don't think it was, I think that it probably it wasn't something that was, done instantaneously, and boy, that I kept on thinking about that. It's like, wow, they could like install an OS that quickly on a starship. But because I had my own hardware problems this week, as you know, Ruthie.
Mm-hmm.
But this whole courier tunnel to me was a complete surprise, and it's like, well, why didn't they ever mention this before? I get the fact that they're dangerous, right? Because I think that was kind of mentioned before, but who would have known that you could get there that quickly? Because I don't think much time had passed from the time that they get there to the time that Book and Burnham get there. So I don't know.
Nope, it was
Anyway.
a little hand wavy.
Yeah.
Great. She goes on to say, I cannot believe Burnham was willing to sacrifice Culber, Saru, and Adira so readily. That doesn't seem very Star Trek. I don't see how Paul forgives her.
I saw it completely differently. I don't think that she was willing to sacrifice them that easily. I think it was a really tough thing that she had to do. And it was one of those things of comes up in Star Trek over and over again. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. And this was an example, I think. So she made the tough call and did what she needed to do. And to me, do you save the Federation over saving a few people? I think you have to. So, and they, like you said, Ruthie, they knew what they were getting into. They knew that they may not survive this, and they were okay making that risk, taking that. So
they made their choice, and they're Federation officers. And I cannot remember the actor's name who plays Culber, said in a ready room.
Wilson Cruz.
Thank you. Wilson Cruz said in a ready room, it's not like they're, he didn't say this specifically, but it's not like they're shrinking violets. They're Federation officers.
Right.
And I get that it's hard for Stamets, but I stand by what I say. He's not thinking clearly. I don't think that he would be able to accomplish what he wanted to accomplish by going back.
Right. Yeah. Plus, like jumping there only gets them part of the way. Like,
right.
They can't jump right into the nebula, can they? I mean,
they had the coordinates to jump right into the nebula, but they could only spend like 20 minutes in there.
Yeah.
And so they would need to jump in, jump out, jump in, jump out. And if he were thinking clearly, he would have realized this, that, hey, man, we need a full crew to get this job done. And
yeah, exactly. And they don't have control of the ship. Like,
don't have control of the ship. Furthermore, the reason why they stayed behind was because they couldn't get that kid out safely yet.
Right.
So, and Culber, not Culber, Stamets doesn't really know that. So all he knows is my people are in danger and thinking about rescuing them, but they're thinking about rescuing the child.
Right.
Who's not a child anymore, but still acts like a child. And throwing temper tantrums.
Yeah, I was going to say 125-year-old child.
Hey, man, Baby Yoda was 90, so.
I thought he was 50, but.
Whatever.
Haven't seen it. Haven't seen it.
You've seen the first season, haven't you?
Yeah.
Well, they say how old he is in the very first episode. I thought it was 90, but I honestly can't remember, so it could have been 50. In any case, that's not the point. The point is, he is no longer a child, but he's still acting like a child. But he could be a child at 120 years old. We don't have any idea how long these people live. Anyway, the real point is he might not forgive her, but that's Starfleet, man. That's life in that kind of an organization, a situation like that. I think if he were thinking clearly, he would know that's not what Culber would have wanted. Yes, he doesn't want to die. He wants to live, but.
Well, also the things that he said, like, oh, we only, we came to keep you company or something like that. Is essentially what he said. I mean, that's not true either. You know?
Like I said, he was very pointed in his barbs.
Yeah. The last Hold Your Horses is from Rick from Cleveland. He says, hold your horses on Admiral Vance negotiating with terrorists. We don't negotiate with terrorists. Isn't that a rule? And I think that it is, but I think things are a little different in this case. Like, they aren't just terrorists. Well, I'd say they're pirates more than terrorists, but they also control a large section of the galaxy, probably larger than the Federation itself in its smaller state. And, they also exude influence on a lot of the galaxy. So, I tend to think that it's a little different than just saying terrorists, but her methods, I mean, you can't, she's presenting herself as this we're this federation or whatever, but I mean, you don't act that way and be a federation to me,
I would say that they are terrorists because they captured a ship. They're holding hostages.
Yes.
So
yeah,
and they had to use subterfuge to get in to. So
yeah.
I mean, she's really, what she's doing is she might claim that she really wants peace, but if she really wanted peace, she would have made overtures not in this way. I mean, she feels like she's coming from a position of strength because of what she's done. That's not a way to really start peace talks.
Right.
So
yeah, I agree.
I think she's a terrorist.
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of silly to start negotiations by stealing Discovery, and that's not how you would start a negotiation. So I agree with that. My only hold your horses was already discussed. So Ruthie, do you have anything else?
Yeah, but it's not really a hold your horses. I just thought of another no.
Well, that's fine.
I think I was more than a little disappointed in, I think I said this to you in our chat. I'm really glad that they still teach Morse code in the first year at the Academy. I'm just a little disappointed that they don't teach how to lock out your ship systems in the first year in the Academy so that it doesn't get taken over by invaders. But
yeah, they tried, but
they didn't really try very well. I mean,
no.
They're at a face-off. I would have had my finger on that trigger. There's a lot of threatening in this episode or this season of, I'm going to do this, and then nothing happens. I'm going to do that, and then nothing happens. Or we can't possibly, and then it happens. And I'm like, really? The hyperbole. I'm going to blow up the ship, but, oh, you got me first. Darn. Because you're not really going to blow up the ship. I mean, I just feel like that's an empty threat to make. I'm like, you shouldn't be... yes, you should be willing to blow up the ship, but if the show isn't really willing to go there, which we know they're not, then I feel like it's just a foolish threat to bring up unless you can get out of it better than what they did. And I don't think that they got out of it very well. They should have been ready to lock out the ship's systems. I mean, that would have explained how Book's ship caught up with them because they had to break through the system lockout.
Yeah.
But they kind of glossed over that. I mean, maybe that happened and we don't know because they glossed over it, but just the fact that they just got locked out so easily, and I don't really buy it. I mean, it sort of shows an ability of the Emerald Chain to, not ability, but a knowledge, I guess, that the Emerald Chain has way more familiarity with Starfleet and Starfleet operations and systems and ships and secret knowledge. I mean, not to mention, It's not just common knowledge about the spore drive. It was super secret.
Right.
And it's only supposed to be, the people in this room are supposed to know. Not even the common person in the Federation knew. So if you want to get with the whole traitor on the inside thing, it had to be one of those people. Because we know it wouldn't be anybody on Discovery.
Jet Reno.
No, gosh.
Okay, you don't have to throw any tomatoes at me. That was a joke.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I kind of am just the fact that, I don't know, I guess I'm just disappointed that the ship got taken over so easily and then they didn't even have any kind of they didn't have any ability to walk it back this episode because, oh yeah, that really did just go down like that. I mean, and like Osyraa said, I took the ship over so easily. I thought it was a trap. I was like, yeah, me too. Like, she shouldn't have been able to take it up so easily. Like, to take it over so easily.
Very true. All right. Well, that's it for our Hold Your Horses. So let's open hailing frequencies with our feedback section. Okay, so our first bit of feedback is from Jeff X-Force11.
Hello, Brian, Ruthie, and Star Trek fans. This is Jeff X-Force11 leaving my feedback for There Is a Tide. Wow, what an amazing episode. This held my attention top to bottom. We got to see so much going on, so much of this season coming to bear in this one episode, and I appreciate that. I really liked Tilly a whole lot more in this episode. I'm a fan of her in general. I think she somewhat redeemed herself in this episode. I think that we got to see some insight into the Federation and how they are smarter than we may have given them credit for in this new reality. I thought it was well placed and well timed that we got to see the sphere data getting pushed into corners and getting pushed into the .23s. I just love this episode. It was so good, and I think that we are going to see a wonderful season finale next week. I am so thankful for this season. It's had its ups and downs, but it was so good. All right, those are my thoughts. X-Force11 is out.
Oh, thank you so much, Jeff X-Force11, for your voicemail. And I know that's 12 for 12, and yeah, you got quite the streak going. I think that's 22 weeks in a row. So, well, glad you enjoyed it. I don't know if I have anything specific that I can say about your feedback, though. Oh, well, maybe Tilly. I guess there is something to say about that. I would say that the jury's still out for me on Tilly. And we'll get to this in Trey's voicemail about Tilly. So we'll hold off about that. But we'll get to that in a minute. Do you have anything you wanted to respond to?
No, just thanks, Jeff. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
All right. Our next bit of feedback is, of course, from Fred from the Netherlands.
Hello, Brian and Ruthie, and all listeners to Talk Through Media. This is Fred from the Netherlands with some feedback for Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 12, the penultimate episode of Season 3. First off, I really think that Tilly does a good job, but it feels a little unreal to have a person so certain of herself and actually being so young in age as well as in experience. Actually, it feels quite unrealistic. So every time she acts quite tough, it feels immediately also unreal. But I don't want to say anything about the acting of Mary Wiseman. That's quite okay, but it's just in the writing. I was quite amazed about the negotiation between the Admiral and Osyraa. Actually, she came with a good proposition, and I thought he was riding his Federation horse a little bit too much, because she even wanted to step down as a leader, in the sense of that the face of the Emerald's participation in the Federation had to be somebody else. She even understood that. Well, I found these negotiations a little bit unequal, because the Admiral had a AI lie detector sitting there, but how does she know he doesn't lie? Where is her own lie detector? How often did this lie detector, if it was a neutral one, say, oh, what the Admiral is saying is the truth? just start this alliance, get peace, and then see it later when you get her into a trial or something like that. It's already so amazing what she proposes, and genuinely meant it. Of course, I like the 3.23s at the end. I only was amazed that in just 3.23s all sphere data fit. Same is true in the beginning when one of Odessa's lieutenants says that there is a little piece of data they don't control yet. How so, little piece of data? And at the end, I just found it a mean trick by Stamets, saying to Michael, and we just followed you because we didn't want to leave you alone in this future, etc., etc. Whereas they actually went to the future because that was the only place where the sphere data would be safe. And it's more or less the other way around. Michael had to sacrifice herself to find the way through this wormhole-like structure so that the Discovery with the sphere data could follow her. So, not so nice trick, Stamets. But yeah, if you are going to lose the love of your life, you are saying everything, obviously. Or am I wrong there? This gives me another idea, by the way. One of the reasons the Discovery had to go to the future was because the sphere data was fully integrated in the computer systems of the Discovery. And now is the sphere data in 3.23 robots? What? Okay, that was all for now. Greetings, all the best, Fred from the Netherlands.
Thank you so much, Fred, for your voicemail, as usual. Lots to think about and lots to respond to. First of all, I don't think you're wrong there about what Stamets did, but I think Stamets is going to say anything to stop Burnham. Like, he's desperate, so he's just trying anything to get her to stop. But like you said, Ruthie, he's not fully rational there. He's just anything to stop her. So
yeah, I think you're not wrong, Fred. I think he was saying anything to get what he wanted to save the love of his life.
Yeah.
His whole life is in that nebula.
Yeah. Yeah. That was really something. Maybe I should have said 9.75. My whole life is in that nebulas. That would have been good.
Yep.
I guess on the Eli and the Federation having a bit of an advantage there because, obviously they would detect Osyraa, but there's nothing that says that Eli couldn't potentially not respond to Vance. So I get that, and we'll have more about that whole thing in the next voicemail because Trey goes into this specifically.
I sort of feel like if she wanted the negotiating advantage, then she would have, not done things differently, but she came to them. She took over one of their ships. She's the aggressor / supplicant here.
Yeah.
So I think it's only right that the Federation has the advantage. But I think you're right, Brian. I'm not sure that the Eli is just specifically focus on her.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But I also feel like the Federation wouldn't have any reason to lie.
Yeah.
Because they're not the ones petitioning, basically.
Right. And I'm pretty sure we talked about this already, but I'm pretty sure that it's more than just the 3.23s that are involved. I think they were just the representatives. And to that end, I'll pull something out of my notes that I had down in my last viewing. I noticed this, and I hadn't seen this up until then. The 3.23s that approach, the bridge crew, they had different colors around their eyes. One had gold, one had blue, and one had maroon. So basically the command colors, just like the command colors were. And I noticed also that the spokesperson was the one that had gold eyes, and so it went back to the 23rd century configuration of, like Captain Kirk or Captain Pike wearing the gold uniform and not the Captain Picard wearing the red uniform. So just something I noticed.
Yeah.
I thought that was a cool touch. Very subtle.
Yeah. And I think I would say about Osyraa and the negotiation, I'm pretty sure she did understand, but was not willing to do it, as was evidenced by the lie that she was caught in. Because it seemed like, maybe we were mishearing you again, Fred, but it seemed like you said that something about that, and I can't remember exactly what he said. Anyway, I hope I wasn't mishearing you again, but I'm pretty sure that she understood giving up control, but she wasn't willing to do it.
Yeah. That's definitely the case. All right. So this is our last bit of feedback, actually, this week. We didn't have any other written feedback. This is from Trey from Pittsburgh.
Hello, Brian, Ruthie, and all listeners of Talk Through Media. This is Trey from Pittsburgh, calling with some feedback about the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery. I must say that I'm glad that Tilly had a plan. I am doing the air quotes here because I'm still not sure what that plan was. She did mention twice, that she had a plan, but I still haven't seen it happen. In fact, the only plan I've seen happen was one that they communicated through sign language. At this point, I'd be happy for Tilly to say something like, I left a poisonous dart on that captain's chair nub. I wanted to talk about SEAL Team Burnham and the way that she was able to navigate Discovery. I think she did a wonderful job. I think she had a knife through her leg and was still able to succeed. I have been saying before that I hear this echo during some of Sonequa Martin Green's scenes. You guys had said you hadn't heard it, but I think that Fred from the Netherlands is picking up on that as well. After listening to it and going back to some other episodes, I think that she is whispering it to a point where she's speaking soft. So the tech audio people are turning up the volume a little bit or adding a little bit of an echo or something. It just makes her a little light, a little airy, and that she's trying to get a point across. Like when Stamets says that he has a child, referring to Adira. I wonder if Adira will call him Dad. With only one episode to go, I am very concerned that we will not be able to wrap up both of the main storylines and tie up any loose ends or answer questions. When I'm watching this, I do need to keep reminding myself that I am watching Star Trek. And when I watch Star Trek The Next Generation, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, I didn't say, how did this work? So I keep having to stop and just say, okay, there are things in this century that I will not understand, and I'm just going to go with it. Kind of like Tilly being the first officer, one of those things that I just don't understand, but I'm just going to go with it. I'm still unsure how Admiral Vance was authorized to negotiate with Osyraa once it had become more than just a security issue. Once a treaty is involved, it becomes a matter of state, not just a matter of state security. I would assume that the Federation Council or the president would want to have a say or at least be updated whenever this development occurred. I'm not quite sure that Admiral Vance was at liberty to negotiate and request that Osyraa is charged for her crimes. This isn't the Dominion. This situation is entirely different. You know, we're trying to essentially allow the Emerald Chain to join the Federation. And Admiral Vance immediately started negotiating matters of state. I don't think that was ever Starfleet's charter. I mean, can you really see Admiral Paris from Voyager or Admiral Nietzsche from Next Generation negotiating, giving away planets? Or, you know, saying, oh, yes, you can join the Federation. And Admiral Picard, in both the book and the show, still had to consult with other admirals, the Federation Council, the president, etc. And how has Admiral Vance never had an apple? Didn't, when we first met Adira, they say that Admiral Tall was sad he couldn't join you when you left Earth? So you mean to tell me Earth has no apples? But anyway, guys, thanks again for all you do, and I wish you well. Live long and prosper. And don't worry, Tilly has a plan. What the heck, hell?
Hello, this is Captain Tilly. What the hell? What the hell? Hold your horses.
I had to throw that in there.
That was funny, Trey.
That was a great voicemail, Trey. I swear, you get better and better with these as we go. Yeah, there's a lot to discuss on this one. The first thing that I want to bring up is the thing that I mentioned a couple of times that I said we would talk about, and that is that whole thing about the negotiation. Because I wondered about this too. For something this big, I can't see a negotiation being a one-on-one thing. Like, you would think that they would both bring in teams for this and not this be, this one-on-one thing. And, why would Vance be given the sole negotiation responsibility? I mean, I could kind of see it in the case of Osyraa, because Osyraa is, the way she is, but it seemed like an awfully simplified thing, like, as opposed to, like, if you think about when the Kittimer Accords were set up, like, that whole thing between, the Federation and the Klingons, there was like big dignitaries from both sides that were involved in that. And that's what I would expect in this case, a similar kind of thing, not just a one-on-one thing. That seems crazy.
Yeah. That makes me think also that Vance is probably in charge.
Yeah. That's what I expect. He's probably the president too, because only in that case could he negotiate matters of state. Like, I don't think that, like, things did turn into that. This is not just a negotiation of like a ceasefire or something. This is like, let's merge our two countries together, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a treaty negotiation, if nothing else.
Yeah. So to me, it seemed like a lot more than what we were called. So what we were told at the beginning.
Yeah.
The other thing that was alluded to was, what is that plan? I wondered that too. She kept saying, I have a plan. It's like, well, what's the plan? And I'm guessing the plan will kind of, be revealed to us next episode, or it'll be like, we see a lot of times, sometimes we'll get this, where it's revealed and it's like a whole surprise. You didn't see it coming, but I think we need to show a lot more than tell here, to go back to what you were saying last week.
Yep.
And it was Morse code, not sign language. I didn't really see any sign language, but
he probably just couldn't remember what it was called.
No, that's true. And you mentioned echo and whispering, and that was great, that effect you did.
Yeah, your sound effects were awesome. Or voice modulation effects, whatever you want to call it. It was awesome. It made me laugh. But I heard it this episode too. After having it pointed out to me, I was like, oh, she's whispering again.
The echo, like, normally that's a funny thing, because you hear echo a lot when somebody like raises their voice. I know when I am, going through our like editing our episodes, I can hear echo a lot easier when our voices get raised. Whereas when our voices are lowered, I don't hear it so much. So
I wonder if it's reverb, not echo.
Well, I think that's the same thing in this case.
Mm-hmm.
But the whispering, I don't really have a problem with it, but yeah, I mean, I've seen her do it, and I think I've even noticed it enough to almost want to mention it in the past episode. I just didn't. I don't know. So
I'm not sure that I necessarily noticed it before, but yeah, it was kind of like, why are you whispering?
that's all that I had for his voicemail.
I really laughed when you said I left a poisonous dart on that chair thing, whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was funny.
That was funny.
That was funny. That's it for our feedback. Do you have any other notes you want to bring up?
I can't think of anything right now. Oh, I have something that's completely unrelated to this episode.
Okay.
Should probably put it down in other something or other notes or whatever. News or wrap it up or something else.
Oh, okay. I guess something I mentioned last week, that we see more of that lieutenant that's on the bridge, and I still don't see her in the credits. And I checked this time, and I checked Memory Alpha, and Sarah Middich is not in the credits at all. So it's not her, and I don't see anything listed for that character either. So I don't know who she is. She wasn't in Memory Alpha. I didn't see her in the credits. So I don't know who that is. It's kind of weird.
What is?
There is Lieutenant that would normally be like Lieutenant Nilsson. That is, we mentioned it last week, with brown hair, and she is a part of that bridge crew that is, with Tilly. And I don't know what the character's name is, and I don't know who's playing her, because I cannot find her listed in the credits at all. So, and I checked Memory Alpha too, and I couldn't find it either. So I don't know who she is or who she's playing, but it's not Sarah Middich, because Sarah Middich is not listed in the credits.
Okay.
Brought up the point about Osyraa's accent. It was especially noticeable in this episode. I nearly gave it a no, and I decided not to, but I'm not really sure why. But her accent was very English in some parts of the episode, like, computer, for example.
I noticed it most on the final word of a statement of hers.
Yes.
Which I notice a lot when I'm listening to, like, if I'm listening to Brits speak, sometimes the final word in their statement will be slightly different. And I think it's just because there's no other word after it.
Yeah.
Like, they'll add an R in between words or something that they won't add if the word falls at the end of a sentence. I can't think of anything off the top of my head now, but
yeah,
I noticed it most at that, like the accent would like pop out with the final word. I was like, whoa.
I would hear it sometimes mid-sentence, but
yeah,
I agree. It was mostly at the end of a sentence.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I laughed.
I wondered if it would be nice with that like distress call that Burnham does, if the person that relays it to her mom is that guy from the first episode, Aditya Sahil. We haven't seen him since then. So I'd like to see him get back into this somehow. Be a nice tie-in.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
I mean, since she found the Federation after all, you'd think she'd want to let her homeboy know.
Yeah. This is the first time that we hear that the tardigrades are extinct. And I wonder if they've simply just disappeared rather than gone extinct. Like, they're still around, but they've just,
gone into the mycelial network instead of...
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
In any case, they're no longer accessible in this universe, I guess.
Just another reason, that whole thing about them, we never heard anything about them not being able to replicate the spore drive until now. Because why is that exactly? Like, I could understand the tardigrade DNA stuff, but they should be able to replicate the spore drive without the tardigrade and without the, I don't know.
They can replicate the drive, but they can't operate it.
Unless they could find a way to pilot it that wasn't dependent on the tardigrade DNA. So that's why I would think maybe the computer with the sphere data could do it if tasked to do it, because the sphere data is the sphere data.
Yep.
So
should be able to.
Yeah, and maybe we're going to end up seeing that. We'll see.
That would be disappointing. They set themselves up for all kinds of, we can just get out of this by doing sphere data.
Here's a question that I had. We see that, the character that is fighting with Burnham in the Jeffries tube, she gets sucked out the airlock, and we see her get spaced, and we see her floating out there. And originally, she seems to be intact. So, when she first is sucked out the airlock, she appears completely intact. And then we see her on the, like, I don't know if that's the bridge viewer or whatever, or she's in front of the bridge. I don't know. But we see, what's his name, Osyraa, look at her on the bridge, and her limbs are like torn from her. So
I don't think they are.
No?
No, I don't. I don't know what you're looking at, but I did not see that. I saw detritus from the Jeffries tube around her, but I didn't see her limbs detached.
I'll have to see if I can find that later, but that's what I saw. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. And last thing, we see another one of those ships that seems to be in the same class as the USS Nog. Really weird design. It almost looks like a fin, called the USS Song. And I thought, man, they should have called it the USS Sung. I don't know why they called it the Song, but I was wondering, like, who could that be named after? It's probably somebody with the last name of Song. That I don't know.
Admiral Song. That's who it was named after. Duh.
Yeah, of course.
Oh yeah, that person. Oh gosh.
NCC 325084, which Memory Alpha claims is the second highest registry number of Federation starships seen, and the highest was the USS Relativity from that seen in Voyager, the time ship, which was NCV, which I don't know why it's a V, but NCV 474439-G, and of course had a 47 in it. Yeah.
Maybe it's like I don't know. The only thing that made me think of this was when I used to work at the bank, we had readouts that we would get that would tell us how much money was taken out, how many transactions there were, all that kind of stuff. And at one point in time, we had some kind of software changeover or something that happened. And one of the numbers was literally changed from a number to a V.
Huh.
I have no idea why. I tried to find out why that happened. No one could tell me. And I didn't know who to call to figure it out. And it wasn't really that big of a deal. But no, the real thing is, no one else could tell me anything about it. I was like, are you serious? Nobody noticed this or thought to ask why that happened? I assumed and intuited based on what I knew what had happened. So I could be completely wrong, because that's kind of how things worked there, though. No one bothered to think for themselves. So.
Okay.
Sorry.
I have nothing to say about that.
That's the only thing I could think of when you said, I don't know why it was a V. Is that whole situation. I have no idea.
All right. Well, let's move on to our shipwide announcements.
So out of left field. You can take all that out if you want.
We went left field a couple of times today. This week's Ready Room features the director of the episode, none other than number one, Jonathan Frakes. And there is a prop segment that actually talks about a lot of different parts of the props, like the new phasers which I thought was pretty cool, and gives a sneak peek to next week, as it always does. Well, I guess it won't next week because there is no sneak peek. And now for our news, and thanks to Wes Huntington again, who collected these for us. Jerry Ryan has confirmed on Twitter that there is another delay in production of season 2 of Picard. And it was originally supposed to start in January, but now it has the start date of February 1st. And of course, unlike Discovery Season 4, which started production in Toronto back in November, Picard is filmed in Southern California, which has, of course, experienced an explosion in new COVID-19 cases. In fact, Florida, where I live, had its record count yesterday ever since the beginning of the outbreak, like over 17,000 in one single day. So it's pretty bad. This will give the production crew more safety measures to consider, I guess, especially among the older actors like Sir Patrick Stewart. So, yeah, I mean, it's a scary time to be had. So, and this is being reported, but I know this, I'd heard this story before, I thought. Ashes from James Doohan, who of course played Scotty, were smuggled aboard the International Space Station back in 2008, but is now only being reported 12 years later. Well, maybe now 13. I don't know when this came out, but I could swear I've heard this before, though. Tig Notaro, who plays, of course, Jet Reno, is returning for Discovery Season 4. I really wonder if she's going to be in the season finale. But will be in a limited capacity due to COVID-19 concerns. She is a breast cancer survivor, having beaten the disease in 2012. She says she will return to the set in May, which is roughly 2 months before the end of filming season 4. So we probably won't see her for quite a while, it seems. That sucks.
Well, maybe they'll be able to, like, put her in there and film all her scenes at once or something.
Maybe.
So maybe she'll still be dispersed throughout.
Lastly, Michael Chabon, who was the showrunner of season 1 of Picard and still one of the executive producers, recently published more backstory on the Troy Rikers on a new social media platform called Medium. Oh, it says he recently left Instagram. Interesting. I didn't know that. Well, Medium has been around for quite a while. So I wouldn't say that's, maybe it's new to him, but Medium is not
maybe
new.
Opened an account.
Yeah. He revealed more about Thad, who of course is Will and Deanna's son, confirming his death in 2396 at the age of 15, and that his full name was Thaddeus Worf Riker Troy. Oh, middle name of Worf, huh? That's interesting.
Nice.
And it looks like you had something else to add?
Yeah, I was watching. So I'm watching Cobra Kai yesterday, and Commodore O showed up in season 3, and I was like, man, she looks familiar. And I didn't really realize it until I was looking at her IMDb page. And
yep.
I mean, I'm looking at her and I'm going, gosh, she looks familiar. And I looked at her IMDb page, and sure enough, I was watching Karate Kid Part 2, and that's where she originally showed up.
Yep.
And I was like, holy crap, that's the same person. I just thought that was funny.
Yep.
It's a little Cobra Kai tie in there.
Yep. Yeah. She was in Karate Kid 2 as like what's his name? Daniel's love interest from Okinawa.
Yes.
And I remember that. And of course, she also played was it Commander Laurel Takashima, I think, in the pilot episode of Babylon 5. We never saw her again, but she was on Babylon 5, the first episode. So
I do not remember her from Babylon 5. But I guess I should put a spoiler tag at the beginning of that in case you haven't watched season 3 of Cobra Kai yet. It did just come out yesterday, after all. But
yeah, new on Netflix, right? The first 2 seasons were on YouTube.
I know that the first season at least was on YouTube Red. I don't know when it came to Netflix.
Oh, okay.
But
I don't know either. I haven't seen it all.
I know it's on Netflix now. Oh, it's so good.
I hear that. I just haven't sampled it.
Yeah, it's really good. And I mean, honestly, this is something that you could find out by Googling anything about who the guest stars might be for season 3. So
yeah, it was on YouTube Red the first 2 seasons, and then so the 3rd season is the first season on Netflix. So interesting. Oh, look who else is on that show. Peyton List.
Yep.
Interesting. Oh, it's a different Peyton List.
Yeah, I thought the same thing, but I was like, that's not the same person, because that name. Yeah. I kept thinking, man, I know this name from somewhere. I feel like I know this girl, but she doesn't really look familiar so much as I remembered her name. Anyway.
Yeah. That's one of the rare cases where they screwed up and there are 2 actresses with the same name.
Yeah.
Because they don't like that. As far as ratings for CBS on Thursday night, of course, they did not air Star Trek Discovery on Thursday night at 10 like they have been doing, but it will return next Thursday at 10 p.m. And we usually also mention Parrot Analytics, but Parrot Analytics, because of the holiday, I guess, hasn't posted any of their insights, which has the demand expressions, the thing that we talk about each week. So nothing to report this week, but I may have double the Parrot numbers for next week. All right, that's it for our news. So Ruthie wants to tell people how to contact us for this season finale coming up.
All right. To submit your theories and feedback, go to talkthroughmedia.com/feedback, where you can submit text or audio. You can call us at 216-232-6146. You can send us an email by emailing Star Trek Discovery at talkthroughmedia.com. You can post in our designated episode thread in our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts. The deadline for Discovery Season 3, Episode 13 will be the deadline for Discovery Season 3, Episode 13 will be Saturday, January 9th, 2020 at 6 a.m. Eastern, 5 a.m. Central, 1100 UTC.
And just so you guys know, we had that problem where these things that would be sent were disappearing, and I think I have fixed it. So I have the stuff that's going through talkthroughmedia.com coming in a different way now, so it seems to be instantaneous. In fact, I just tried it, and sure enough, it came in. So I think I fixed the problem. Yay! Connect with us. Our Twitter and Instagrams are at Star Trek TTM, and since I made that big thing about Instagram, I haven't had a chance to update Instagram since the last time. So I've got some more posts to make there. And I've fallen behind on Twitter, so I need to give them equal. So a great way to support us when we do actually post there is to share our posts on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And the Facebook ones that can be shared, go to facebook.com/talkthroughmedia, where you can write us a review there for the network and share us there, and that would be great. And subscribe to us in Apple Podcasts or the podcast client of your choice. So if you don't already subscribe, if you're just grabbing us randomly, make sure you subscribe. That way you'll know when our episodes come out. And while you're there, give us a rating review. And of course, I brought up earlier that link that you can find on the blog post that I posted to Facebook earlier. And that is there's a place where you can go that has Apple Podcasts and Stitcher and Castbox and one other place I can't think of. But yeah, you can help us out by leaving us a review, and thanks to those that just did that recently. And another way you can support us is through Patreon. And we haven't been able to do a Patreon episode in a few months. It just worked out that way. But I believe we will be trying to do a Patreon episode for January. So probably in a couple of weeks after the season's done. And we'll kind of do something. Well, that'll kind of be our like end of season episode. So we'll release it on the Patreon feed and then eventually to the regular Discovery feed. But if you want to help support us, you can do it for as little as $1 a month. We would like to thank our Patreon supporters, Clint McCollum, Lawrence Todd, James Robbins, Fred Petrie, Cal McAdams, Kim Vogley, Brian Shiro, Christoph Leitner, Lee Radke, Aaron Mays, Michael Carrier, Stephen Chambers, Kevin Lyle, Jeff Gentry, and Jeff Bayako. All of our new episodes are on YouTube first, so just search for Talk Through Media and remember to subscribe to us and click that bell to get notified when we have new videos, because they go there before they get released on the podcast feed. And if you want to catch everything that Talk Through Media does, there's the Talk Through Media all-inclusive feed, which in addition to the Star Trek Discovery podcast, which also includes Picard and Lower Decks, Rebinged DS9 is on there, The Walking Dead Talk Through, which will be coming back, I think, in early March, and Let's Talk Through. So the next episode of the Star Trek Discovery podcast will be covering, and get this, we were wondering when the heck is part 2 coming. It turns out that season 3, episode 13 is titled That Hope Is You, part 2. So the if you remember, the season premiere was part 1, so we finally have part 2 next week. We thought it was originally called Outside. It has been changed so that now, instead of it being Outside, it's That Hope Is You, Part 2. We don't know who's written it, but we know it's directed by executive producer Olatunde Osunsanmi. We don't know the description for it, but we can kind of figure who is going to be involved and what they're going to do, because, you know, it's a season finale after all. And we see a clip in the writing room where it shows Culber and Saru back, you know, on the planet, the nebula, in the holo program. And the next on clip shows a whole bunch of stuff with them fighting to take the ship. Vance says that the Federation is done for. Osyraa fighting Burnham and seemingly having the upper hand. Booker getting tortured. A strange thing, which I don't understand. Gray is a Vulcan, and several other things, but those are the things that I saw. So until next time, I'm Brian.
And I'm Ruthie.
Peace and long life.
Live long and prosper.